Hello, and thank you ever so much for joining me today to do this session. We normally do our sessions over Zoom, and I thought it would be a really nice idea to try and see if we could interest a few new people and by doing a Facebook Live. So as I said, if you missed earlier, Maria is on the messages today, so any comments or feedback, please direct your comments. Maria might get in there and answer quicker than I will, but I will definitely be in there and getting them at some points. So I see some lovely regular names there. Hi guys. So yeah, I am right. I think we will get started. So I'm going to just do a very quick, should I use a square canvas or a rectangle? I did this on a rectangle in a portrait, but in hindsight I think this would look fabulous on a square canvas. So if you want to go with a square, absolutely do it. The only difference would be is when we do our guide marks, when you put in your horizontal lines, what you want to do is have where we're going to put a line halfway, which will come under the eye. If you divide yours into thirds across and then place your circle for your eye in the middle third, that would be really fabulous. So yeah, I did actually think to myself, oh, this would have looked so much nicer in a square, but there you go. So little adaptations you can make to this. Really, you can make your tiger more orangey if you want to. That would work really, really well. I've done mine in kind of quite yellowy, quite neutral sort of shades, because I thought that would quite really make the eye stand out. So eye colours you can change as you want. You can, mine's green. Tigers have really bright, vibrant orange. You could do blue. You could do whatever you wanted. Other things you could do is this all in shades of grey. This would look beautiful with light and dark shades of grey. So it's kind of, you know, like sort of black and white and stuff. And then you could potentially just have the colour in the eye, which would be really interesting way of doing it. And before we get started, I'm going to just do a hopefully not quite so chaotic little ad for Monday, Bank Holiday Monday. We've got another free Facebook Live session, which is going to be The Howling. So hopefully I'll have got my act together a little bit more for that one, and we'll have a proper webcam set up, and rather than having to improvise at last minute. And this will be our free session, so we'd love to see you for that one as well. So I'm going to go through how we start off. So I'm going to clear my canvases out the way. See, there was me really hoping that I'd be able to have the original up for you to view at the same time. And what we're going to do is, with a pencil and a ruler, we're going to divide our canvas up. So let me get that a bit more. There's such a lag on this that I now can't see if I'm in the middle or not. No, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. Utter chaos. Right, so what you want is to divide your paper or your canvas into half. So if you're working in a portrait, you want to find halfway down and mark yourself a pencil line. Ideally you want to do this as palely as possible so you can only just see it. For me to do it on the canvas so it shows up on the camera, I'm going to have to do a bit more, make it a bit darker so you guys can see it. And then I'm going to divide my canvas into 3 going across. So I've got my ruler. I'm going to show you what I did. If you're going to go with a square, then what I would do is do thirds across and thirds down, and then put your circle in the middle. So I'm going to mark my canvas off. So I've got a 30cm wide canvas. I'm going to mark it across and at the bottom, and then I'm going to pop my lines in. So I'm going to make them a little bit darker than you want to, because I want it to show up on the screen for you. The reason we do it so pale is because we want those lines to disappear, and particularly with the paler colours, they don't always tend to. The other thing that can happen is that your paint can actually pick up some of the actual graphite from the pencil, and it will make your colours a bit sort of dull and sludgy. And then I'm going to do the same. So if you're doing a portrait, on a portrait way, then you want to divide halfway. If you're going with a square, divide it into thirds again. So the half on mine is approximately 20 centimetres down. I'm going to mark that up on both sides. Of course, you don't have to do these marks. If you just want to kind of crack on with it, you absolutely can do. And then I'm going to draw a circle in the middle. I've very roughly put one in for earlier for me. So if you've got something that fits in, mine's approximately 10 centimetres. Oh, not the camera. I knew I'd do that. I've had to put everything in different places to try and set everything up, so I just know I'm so clumsy at the best of times that I'm going to end up crashing into something, because I've been doing these for a year now and I kind of had the same place and same position for absolutely everything. So you kind of go on autopilot. I'm now going to put in another circle. I want this to be approximately half the size of this one, but up towards the very top. So if you want to, if it helps, you can put a little mark in the centre of your big circle, but if not, just do a big freehand kind of one. And that's going to be our eye for later on. Once we've got to that point, what we can do is start to get our paints out. So if you want to go with the slightly more subdued colours and slightly more natural, so if I show you the original again, so if you want to go for similar colours to this one that I've done, I've used white, and I've used some yellow ochre. If you want to, you can go much more orangey. If you want to go really bright and funky, then, you know, really vibrant colours. Use like really bright primary yellows, really bright sort of primary oranges. If you want to go more this sort of realistic tone like I have, then yeah, I've used yellow ochre. If you don't have a yellow ochre, you can mix a colour quite similar using bright primary yellow. I'd add a little bit of white to it, not much, just a little bit to sort of solid it up a little, and then I would add a very, very tiny spot of something like a burnt umber, just to sort of tone it down. If you used something like a sienna, it might be a bit on the bright and vibrant side. So let's move this out the way again. And I personally like to use paper plates for these, for mixing my colours on, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to add some white. I'm going to take some of my my yellow ochre, and I'm also going to grab myself a little bit of red and a little bit of a I've got some of my primary yellow as well. I've got some white, some red. I'll show you my palette in a minute so you guys can see what I've done. So we're going to use quite a lot of the white, so be quite generous with the amount that you give yourself of that. You only really need a very small amount of the burnt umber, or whichever brown you're going with. And finally I need my yellow ochre. So here we go. This is the colours that I've mixed, that I've taken, and I'm going to start to mix those together. So the first shade we're going to want is a very pale shade that goes over the eye and down kind of in the bottom right hand corner for the cheek. So I'm going to take some of my yellow ochre. I'm going to take a nice clean brush and I'm going to add some white to it. So I like to put them next to each other on the palette and then slowly add them a bit at a time, mix them in. So we want to aim to get these the kind of consistency of yogurt when we start to add water. And when we paint, it's always a massive temptation to get loads and loads of paint on your canvas. Try and resist that and use just enough to cover the canvas. Otherwise you'll still be here a week next Tuesday waiting for your paints to dry. So the good thing is if you're doing the recording you can pause it, so that's okay. Right, so I'm going to start off with my pale colour. I'm going to come around the top of the eye like this. I'm not going to load up my brush again for now. I'm going to take this right out up to the top of the corner of the canvas, and I'm going to bring this up. So I'm effectively filling in above the eye the two right hands and directly above thirds of this canvas. There we go. So I've got this lovely kind of pale buttery colour. I'm going to then follow this around the underneath of my eye. It's not the end of the world if you go over the lines a bit. So I'm going to bring this down just one brush stroke. I'm using a 1-inch filbert brush here, but any of your like big chunky wash brushes will work really well. And then I'm going to come down into this bottom corner. So this is going to get very confusing because it's mirrored for some reason as well. And I'm going to just fill in this corner here. So I haven't reloaded my brush at all for any of this. I'm just using it and getting it over that canvas until it runs out. So there we go. Once you guys have done that, if you want to give me a little thumbs up or a done comment so that I know that you're ready to move on, that would be great. This is so weird because I'm normally used to having lots of conversations and stuff. Our sessions are really, really super sociable and not at all the kind of things where everyone's on mute unless we've got a million kids in the session. So it's quite weird for me not to be discussing Line of Duty with you all and things like that. Because this is really quite a simple painting, you can really kind of get into using textures and interesting shading and highlights and lowlights to really create some lovely effects. And Oh, I'm good. I'm really glad it's still fun though. So yeah, because it's so simple, we can really kind of go to town and have a really fun time putting interesting reflections in our eyes and getting the texture of our fur. And so, oh, I just had a panic. My computer decided it wanted to restart itself. This is just a day where I'm going to go and take all technology and throw it out the window, I think. So I've got a couple of messages that people are saying that they're done, so I'm going to talk through the next bit. So if you're using your yellow ochre, I'm going to start to add a little bit of that into my pale colour. So just start to tone it down a little bit. If you're going with your bright, vibrant oranges, then start to add a little bit more of your red, really sort of vibrant, make it really vibrant and wild. But do it in stages as you go along. So again, I'm scraping the excess off, and this time I'm going to start to work around these areas that we've got left. So on my one you can see that we've got the line still showing, but hopefully if you guys have gone a bit more gentle and a bit more subtle with your lines, they will be starting to disappear now. So I'm just brushing over the joins between the colours, just starting to get a little bit of graduation in there. I'm using the same brush as I was using before because we're just going really subtly with these colours, so there's not a massive contrast between them, so we don't have to worry about giving our brushes a good clean or anything like we would normally. I'm going to start to bring this down and fill in some of the other areas as well, but with this sort of transitional shade that we're using here, I'm going to just concentrate on the areas where we meet up with the paler colour. And again, I'm working the paint into the canvas rather than really layering it on. And again, just like I did before, I'm going to add a bit more of my darker colour. So again, if you're going with your yellow ochre, I'm going to go straight in with now with the pure yellow ochre colour. And yeah, you can start to really see the contrast coming in here. So, and I'm going to start to fill in the rest of the canvas. We're going to come back over this in a bit with some sort of much more vibrant shades, but we're going to get this main colour in. So because I haven't got masses and masses of paint on my brush, I can get this graduation. I'm not getting hard lines, and I say this when I paint with the kids all the time, that I need to move that way, everyone wants to paint with as much paint as they can get on their brush. I think it's, I don't know, I think maybe we're programmed to do that at school, and actually it makes it so much harder to control. So the great thing to do is to kind of just work in small amounts of paint, just like when you're blending really and mixing colours. You just add a small bit at a time. Don't be tempted to go in there and really sort of slap loads and loads of paint on. I mean, if you're doing impasto painting, then yeah, fantastic, go for it with loads and loads of paint, but be prepared, particularly if you're working in oils, for it to take a month to dry. So I am just going to pop in the last bit in this canvas. So, and one of the other things is, don't worry if your paint is streaky. We're painting fur on a tiger, it's going to be streaky, so we absolutely want to go in that direction, so don't panic if it is a little bit streaky. So now I've gone, this is totally throwing me because the camera's in the wrong direction. I keep trying to move it, so, and I keep moving it the wrong way. So again, once you're ready to move on, give me a little thumbs up. I'm going to try backing this camera up a little bit. See if I can get the whole thing in the screen in one go. No, oh, I keep going the wrong way. You're done again. You're super fast, Nikki. I think one more little shove should do it. Okay. So I'm now going to use my yellow ochre and I'm going to start to add some more shades to it. So hello? Oh, why has that done that? Has that just ended for everyone? Did everyone just have a, like, I just got a thing saying this live video has ended, but I'm hoping that it seems to be okay. So I'm going to carry on and hope that you guys are all still with me. So yeah, I'm going to start to add some more vibrant shades, so some really bright oranges and things like that. So I'm going to add a really tiny amount of red to really brighten this up. I'm just using Studio Red, just a lovely primary kind of standard red colour. And if you want to, you can add a little bit of your primary yellow as well. So don't go too contrasty too quickly. So, and again, I'm taking most of the paint off and I'm going to work in this, start off working under this eye here, along this cheek area and also along the main nose area here. So I'm just brushing really lightly. I've got a small amount of paint on my brush. If I haven't mixed my colours perfectly and it's a bit streaky, then fantastic. I'm then going to come in under this eye here, so you can really see with the oranges it's really starting to lift the colours. I'm going to leave those streaks. I'm just using small amounts of quite thick paint, so I've not got masses of colour on it and not watered it down. And I'm going to do the same again, and this time, as well as adding a bit more red, I'm going to add a very small amount of my burnt umber, literally just the very tip of my brush, just to start to darken it down a little bit. So, and then I'm going to go again over those areas that I want to strengthen. So up this main area of the nose, and again I'm just light, really super light flicky strokes. So I'm going to come down to the bottom of my canvas, just work upwards, be really kind of free and dynamic with your strokes to get this fur sort of texture. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to do some, I'm literally just kissing the canvas with my brush here, and then I'm going to just come in down here. So absolutely light strokes. I'm leaving my brush marks on the canvas so that it will look a bit like fur. That is our fur done. And so what we need to do is we're going to start to work on our eye while we leave that off to dry. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave you guys just to paint in the rest of your fur, and as soon as you're ready, whichever colour eye you decide you're going to go with, grab your colours. So if you're going to go with say a blue, I would put probably, actually I'll probably go with a blue as well, but so for my eye I'm going to use cerulean and a little bit of white and some ultramarine for the darker colours. If you're going with a green eye, then use your primary yellow, add a little bit of white to it, a little bit of blue, a bit of green, something to you need at least two shades. You need a pale one that's lighter, so maybe a bit warmer, and then a darker, cooler tone, something like, say, yeah, so maybe a sap green or something like that. So you would have like an apple green and then a sap green or something like that. If you're going for reds and oranges, tone it down a little bit. Don't go pure bright red. Just take your red and add maybe the tiniest spot of your yellow ochre and your burnt umber, just so it's just taking the edge off of it. You don't want to darken it and make it sludgy, but you don't want bright primary colours either. So for those of you who've not painted with me before, so I always give my brush a wipe out on a tissue before I put it in the water, just because it gets all the excess paint off and it saves you from having to run every 5 minutes to get clean water. So when someone actually sort of said to me about that, I had one of those real like, oh, seriously, how did I never ever think about that before? So yeah, so if that's just something to keep in mind. So I'm going to grab myself a nice, I'm going to use a flat 1/2 inch flat square brush, and all I'm going to do next is grab my colours and get cracking. So I'm using cerulean blue, so just a nice kind of sky blue colour. I'm also going to grab some ultramarine, and I'm going to use a little bit of white in there, just because I really want to make sure I have a contrast between my blues. So you can see my colours that I've got here, and with my 1/2 inch flat, I'm going to add a little bit of water. And what I want to do, I'm going to use part of the cerulean with the white for my light blue, and the other part of the cerulean I'm going to mix in with my ultramarine, because ultramarine isn't terribly opaque unless you've got the super expensive stuff, and I want to make sure that I can really well cover what I'm doing. So I'm going to go over the edge of my pupil here, just so that I know that I haven't got to worry about me losing, kind of like having white edges showing through or anything like that. You don't have to worry too much about the outside edges, because we're going to come round with some big kind of black lines and stuff like that at the end. So we just need to make sure we're not leaving any gaps. So, oh, got a bit generous there. So I've got my cerulean. Again, if you've got streaks in your paint, it's really not the end of the world. You're gonna start to paint this and make it look all a bit sort of streaky and put some reflections in and fab things like that. So you really don't have to worry if your paint isn't perfectly mixed. So that's my paler blue colour popped in. I'm going to wipe my brush out, and then using exactly the same brush, I'm going to take some of my cerulean blue, mix in some of my ultramarine, and that's going to give me a nice darker tone, so kind of more like a cobalty kind of blue, and it just helps a little bit with making your ultramarine have a little bit more body and things like that. So I must say, Maria, you're doing very good subtitles there. Very good running commentary. When you do one of these and I'll be chatting to everyone and distracting them, not being as professional as you, I'm sure. So what we want to do is have our lines and our shading coming from a certain point in our eye. So we're going to find the middle of our pupil. I'm just going to put a little mark there so that I know where it is. And I'm going to start off by putting a little bit of a shadow in the top of the eye, like this. So this is just my ultramarine and my cerulean blue coming down into the paint underneath is still wet. That's absolutely fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my brush up, so I'll show you what I mean. I'm really sharpening the tip of it, and then I'm going to start to put some lines coming out from that central point. They're going to radiate out, and I'm going to start off with it wet, and then I'm going to come back and do some more with it once the underneath has started to dry off. So we're getting a little bit of texture in there while the paint is still wet, and then we're going to come back and put in much stronger colours. The other thing we want to do is, so obviously there's something reflecting in the eye, and you can start to put in a bit of something. So I'm going to start to put in, while it's still wet, I'm going to have like a little bit of a horizon, and I can put in some trees, so a small amount of paint, just dabbing like this, because they're kind of meant to be like something but nothing as well. It's just to create a little bit of atmosphere in the eye. So I'm going to leave those colours for the moment and let that dry off and come back to it in a second. And so if you guys, when you're ready, give me another thumbs up or a done, and I'll know that we're ready to move on. awesome. Oh, Nikki, first one done again. So we're going to start to put in some of our first stripes. And what we're going to do is use our either our flat 1/2 inch brush, or if you've got, you know how you have those like different random weird shaped brushes in your collection, if you have something like a sword brush, so one of those ones that's angled, you can use this. That's absolutely fine. If you're going with a flat 1/2 inch brush, you could use a fan brush, but I think you would be making yourself making it even harder than it needs to be. So if you've got a nice flat square brush, so this is a 1/2 inch, you want one that's got a nice sharp point to it, one that once you've got a bit of paint load on it, you're going to be able to get a nice sharp point, because we're going to paint with this sideways. We're going to use the thin side of it. So if you're using your sword brush, then what we're going to do is paint kind of with the longer side down. So I'll show you the difference between the two, but as I keep on saying, to get the effect of the fur, don't be tempted to go massively kind of over egging it with the paint. It's just small subtle amounts of paint on your brush, and then you'll have a little bit more control over it. It's much better to kind of go back and grab a bit more paint and then come back and get some more when you need to. We want soft edges to this. We want our paint brush to be running out of paint to get the graduated textures around it. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm going to add some water to my paint, and I'm going to get it to that yogurt type consistency. So this is me painting with the sword brush. These just came in a set where I bought a load of them, and I've actually found it actually quite handy. It's great for, you know, painting like little simple leaves on things and stuff like that. I'm not normally one to sort of condone spending loads and loads of money when you don't need to, but actually giving yourself a little kind of catalogue of brushes in different styles. You might not use them all the time, but they're great. Get people to buy them for you for Christmas and birthdays and things like that, and they don't have to be the expensive ones either. So I know that I'm going to put a big black area around this eye, but for now we're not going to touch it because we want it to dry off while we're working. So what we can do though is put the outline, so that will give us a guide of where we're going with this. So I'm going to leave a gap. I'm going to start where the middle line and my third line met, and I'm going to come up and over the top of my eye. So this doesn't have to be a perfect line or anything like that, it is just a guide at the moment. So, and then I'm going to flick out, give our tiger a little bit of eyeliner, go a bit retro with its 50s eyeliner there, and then I'm also going to come down underneath. We're going to thicken these up when we come to it. This is just our guide, and come out. So this is just giving us something to work from. So I like to start off by painting in areas where I know where they're going. So I know that from this eye I want to come up to the corner. So I'm going to scrape off all of the excess paint on my brush. So I've got that, will give me a lovely sharp edge, and in little strokes I'm going to start to work up and out to that edge. So you can see along here, particularly where I'm starting to run out of paint on my brush, it's starting to get a lovely amount of texture on it. And then I'm going to come back over again and change the angle slightly. and again, I'm just using really light kind of very just caressing the paper or the canvas, so not pressing down hard or anything like that. I'm just really light strokes. I'm now going to change my direction because I want to bring this over the top, so I'm going to come out, I'm going to swoop down on the outside of the canvas, and then I'm going to swoop up. So you can see here that I'm not making this at all solid. I'm just starting to put in my layers. I do want this to be quite solid though, so I'm going to come back a few times, sweep over. Oh, it wouldn't be one of our sessions without Dobby coming and ringing his bell on his collar. So, and I've got areas where I've got the background still showing through, and other areas that are really solid. And then just before I reload up my brush, I'm just going to come and just pull some of this paint through like this. So I've got some nice different angles starting to happen with the fur lines, and I'm going to now start to work into some of the other areas where I know where they are, and then they're like the big areas, and then start to put the thinner, finer ones in afterwards. So I'm going to come over and work above the sort of the bridge of the nose now. So I know, so you might find, it's totally up to you, how do what works for you. So you might find that it's actually easier for you to put some big guidelines in. You want the higher one of these to come out further than the lower ones. You don't want that to kind of line up too much. And then it might be a case of you go, okay, well, I've got my guideline, I can go back over it. So, but yeah, do what works for you. Don't be dictated to by me. If it makes it harder for you to do it that way or easier, then do that. But what we're aiming for is these lovely textures and strokes, really light strokes like this. So, and I'm rotating my brush around as I do it. So don't forget, I find particularly with black that you end up with kind of it drying out quite quickly on the brush. So if you need to add a little bit more water, go for it, and then come back. So, and don't forget to change your angles as well. So I'm going to go back over and start to thicken this up now. Don't be afraid of a bit of contrast in your painting. I think it's quite common with sort of people, they start to paint and then all of a sudden it's like a revelation that actually you can be quite dynamic with the amount of contrast that you put in and shading and things like that. So I now know that I've got this area between these two big marks that I want to fill. So I'm going to start to pop some smaller marks in. So again, if you want to give yourself a guideline to stick to, then do that. So and then I'm going to come back out here. I'm going to do like a little V shape. And then really think about varying sizes as well. Starting to look a bit like a tiger. How's everyone getting on? You all okay? So I did chuckle. We record the sessions and we've got a little online store and people can purchase them and download them. And one of our regulars did a recording, and awesome. And she she said that she was replying to me when I was asking if everyone was okay in the session. So yeah, this is super weird not being able to chat to you guys. So I'm going to switch over and start to work on some of the lower bits. We are going to stop and go back and work on our eye and then come back and do some more, but I'm going to just get a couple more lines in. So that's the joy of these live ones. You have to sort of plan as well, allowing time for things to dry and coming back and stuff like that. So I've got to put in this detail underneath the eye, and because of that I'm going to actually leave that area for now and come back, and so I'm going to work on some of the much more solid bits down a bit lower. So I'm going to do a couple down here. We've got our bridge of our nose, which we want to kind of leave that area quite clear because generally they don't have stripes down on that area. So where I've got that third line that comes out from under the eye, I'm going to start off about halfway down on that, which I'm saying this, I'm hoping that you've done them so pale that you can't actually see your lines. And I'm going to do one that's going to sort of do a double swoop. So starting here, starting about the middle. So again, if you want to, you can put yourself in a line, a little planning line of where you want to put this. So I'm definitely making it uneven. I don't want to make it look like it's kind of like a scallop design and it's all balanced and even. We want it to be uneven, and we also want to rotate the fur around, so you might find that getting your first few marks in really helpful. Gives you a bit of a direction that you're going to take these, and I'm going to fade them out to kind of nothing at the edge. Add a little bit more water to my paint because it's starting to get a bit thick, and then I'm going to start my little light flicky motion, small amounts of paint. Hopefully you guys are getting kind of the hang of the not painting with too much paint and getting the textures that you want rather than loads and loads of solid colour. And then I'm just going to keep slowly going outwards and building and building and building, and what I want is for this to kind of come to a bit of a point underneath the eye. So if you do put your planning mark in, make sure you give it a good amount of coverage in that middle, because you don't want that to be visible at the end. and then I'm going to go. Oh, the rattly cat's back. So, go. Just really getting that soft texture on the inside, and I'm really fading it away as I come out to those points. So you can do some broken lines in there as well if you want to leave a little bit of a gap. So we can do the next one that sits in above. Don't be sort of tempted to go too close to the eye. We're going to leave that until the end. And the other thing to think about is to this next line, don't line it up with the line below. So I'm going to start this slightly further out, and I'm just going to have a bit of a crescent shape. So I'm going to go like that with this one, and again just following light strokes, following the angle that the fur would grow in. So I'm starting to work this in, not reloading my brush, starting to let my brush run out of paint, and that's how I start to get the fuzziness around the edges. So I definitely don't want it to be even, so I'm going to thicken it up at the curve area, just like that. I'm going to leave the black for the moment, and I'm going to keep this brush to the side and come back to it and use it again in a second. So before we go into work on the eye, we're going to put a little bit of a highlight just in the fur underneath and over the top of the eye, just to, the eyes kind of, they're almost like white around those areas. So we're gonna just, with a very dry brush, no water on it at all, and again a really tiny amount of paint. So scrape all your paint off virtually. So if you've never done dry brushing before, you basically, if I show you on my hand, I take virtually all the paint off, and then you just rub your brush underneath where the mark is for your eye, and you just do that. It will dry almost instantly. So I'll show you this again. So taking the paint off, just dabbing it. Ideally you want to do it on your tissue, not on your hand. Take virtually all the paint off, and then just light strokes rubbing around. So if you're really interested in learning about dry brushing and scumbling techniques, our free session Venice is that's what this is all about. It's the principle of scumbling and how to create interesting light, sort of early morning lights and things like that, in the same way as Monet did. So that's quite an interesting one if you want to learn about dry brushing and scumbling. So, which again is a fabulous technique to get some really sort of interesting, you can literally get your paint glowing. It's quite unbelievable what you can achieve with some scumbling. So, and a little bit of colour theory as well. And then I'm just gonna again dry brush. So down the inside of the eye here. You might find that you want to sort of take this a bit further out and do a few layers. So the more layers you do, the more solid your paint will become, and you'll find that it dries instantly, so you can really build up layers. You can get a lot of subtlety into it, so it's a really awesome technique to explore, and I can't recommend it highly enough. While we've got that all nicely drying, we're going to come in and put a bit more detail into our eye. So I'm going to go back to my darker blue. And where we had our lines radiating out from that central point, we're going to, again, I'm sharpening my brush just like I was earlier, and I'm just going to bring some of these lines out. So if you find that your paint starts to dry off a little bit, add a little bit more water, and again I'm working with my brush sideways on. Ooh, unless you drop it on the floor, so you have to go for another one. So if you're struggling with getting your thin lines, don't battle on, switch over and get yourself a thinner brush. That's there's no point in battling with it if you're finding that you're just not having the control that you want. It's always better just to go down, grab yourself a finer brush, and work with that. So I want mine to look sort of brush strokey and have these textures in, because I'm trying to recreate all the patterns that you get in eyes and things. So it looks a bit weird at the moment, but once we put that pupil in, this will totally change how this looks. I'm going to come over again with my darker blue. Again, a little bit, I'm almost dry brushing just along the top, and then I'm going to come in, I'm going to switch over to my finer brush. I'm going to add a bit more water to my paint, and where we put in our little kind of like horizon line where there wasn't much in the way of contrast, I'm going to start to put some details in. So we don't have to be, I mean, you can be as specific if you want to. If you want to put a whole scene in your, if you've got the time and you want to put a whole scene going on in your your tiger's eye, you absolutely can do. So that is you'd have a fantastic painting by doing that. But for this, I'm just kind of suggesting that there's something reflected in the eye. So I don't want to put too much. I want people's kind of to look at it and see what they want to see in it. So, and then I'm going to water down the paint a little bit more, and I'm going to put in, so just a couple of little details, maybe a tree trunk, maybe some bits kind of coming up. I'm not putting in too much. I don't want anything really solid in there. I just want that suggestion that there's something there. Yeah, that's, I'm getting confused. It's your dragon. Actually, that would be a fantastic kind of follow-up. We could do a dragon's eye one. I'll leave that one to you, Maria. Okay, so again, I've used quite light strokes for that, so that should be dried quite quickly. But what we can start to do is the rest of our black tiger stripes, and then once that is, our blues all dry, we can come in and put the black on. This also gives that time to dry off properly and for us to put in our white highlights at the end. So I've got this eye area that I've got to put in, so I'm going to keep avoiding that for now, just allowing my blue to dry off a little bit. So I'm going to come in, I want to put kind of like a cheekbone stripe in this area here. So I want a big kind of curved area in this section, and then I want to come up and marry it with this one up here. So don't forget, once your black started to dry, if you've found areas that aren't as solid as you want, just easily go back over them and solid them up a little bit, but try and not do that around the edges. Try and keep the edges nice and textural and soft. And I'm going to come in there. So that's going to be my next stripe, and then underneath that, so that I keep that in mind, I'm going to put one that goes right off the edge of the canvas like that. So again, light strokes, don't have too much paint on your brush. If you are getting a bit kind of, it sort of builds up without you realising, and if that's happened, just grab your tissue and wipe off your paint and just start again. So I think almost the hardest part, harder than actually painting, is learning to control paint. And I know that sounds silly because that's technically what painting is, but sort of learning control it on your brush is kind of almost harder than actually doing the painting yourself. So making sure my lines aren't sort of solidly the same width, so I'm going to have sort of narrower points coming to a nice solid area in the middle, sort of much more chunky. Just like this, brushing it outwards, doing that quite slowly. Again, we don't want this to line up. We want them to start and finish in different places. So I know Maria's been putting in the comments about, obviously we have our Facebook page, but we also have a Facebook group called The Artists Hangout, where if you've enjoyed painting with us, or you want to show off what you've done, or you want a bit of tips or advice or anything like that, we always love, and I promise we're always really, really positive with our feedback. We have, the Artists Hangout group, and lots of people who do our sessions post on there, and everyone's really, really super positive and supportive and absolutely lovely. And so we always love to see how you've got on with your paintings. We always love to see suggestions of things that you'd like us to paint. So anything like that, absolutely. And also please like us on Facebook and Instagram. So and dare I say this, because I'm far too old really, but very soon TikTok. So my daughter's job this weekend is to try and teach me to use TikTok. If we thought Facebook Live was a disaster, that should be even more interesting. We have actually, yes. So Maria said about we have gone a bit Dalmatian mad. So Maria's got her fabulous painting of Cruella coming up, and I've got a Dalmatian one coming up as well. So before we all shoot off, I can do the Man Excel and show you some of they're my paintings that are coming up. So obviously I haven't got Maria's here with me, so unfortunately, but yeah, so please do have a look at the rest of the sessions coming up. Once we've got our stripes, I'm going to switch over to, oh, I think you're letting the side down if you couldn't find a dragon emoji. There must be one. So I'm going to switch over and I'm going back to the good old 1/2 inch flat brush, and with my black paint I'm going to start to fill in that eye. So this is one of those moments with paintings where it will transform it. So first of all, I'm going to go around the outside. So I'm using this widthwise because I want a lovely strong line. I've made my paint a little bit wetter than I have been using it, because to get a good line, there's a few things that you need to do. You want your paint to be a little bit more fluid. So definitely not watercolory, but just a little bit more fluid than we've been using around here. And the other key, I know I sound like a broken record, but don't have too much paint on your brush. It's always a temptation for people when they're doing lines to think, oh, if I load up loads of paint on my brush, what happens is I can get sort of further round, where actually what happens is you get lumps of paint and you can't get a nice even line. So so that's the key. So the other thing, which I can't really do because I'm talking, but if you take a big breath in and then paint as you breathe out, that actually makes your hand steadier. So all those years of doing photography classes, I did learn something. So, and it works not only for painting but also for taking photos. So I'm starting to get a nice round line. This is probably the only bit where you actually need to get a bit sort of sharp with your line. The rest of it you want it to be nice and fuzzy, but it will give you a beautiful contrast between the fur and the texture in the rest of the painting and these super sharp lines around your eyes. So I'm going to come round. I've turned my brush on its side now, so I'm getting a slightly thinner line. And I'm going to come round at the top like this. So have a look at thickening up your lines towards the outside of the eye. So the inside near the bridge of the nose would be thinner, and the outer ones, as it goes round, they're going to get a bit thicker. So we're going a bit Cleopatra-y with our eye, and you can just do a little bit of a flick out to the right hand side, and then I'm going to come down the inside near the bridge. So again, I'm going to scrape off most of my paint. I'm going to come in the inside, and then I'm going to come down, thicken this line up, and as I come down I'm applying less pressure. I'm going to give it a few strokes, and I'm going to fuzzy that edge. So Maria's mentioned in the comments we do quite a few competitions, often winning free tickets. I think we might do win an original painting for the next one. So yeah, I'm going to run up, have a little staff meeting with her, and I think we'll decide on something for our next painting. So once I've got that soft area on the inside of the eye, I'm going to come in and it's pupil time. Da, da, da. So if you can't see your original lines for this, then particularly if you're doing the recording, don't be scared to kind of go back, get your pencil out. if you drew round something originally to get yourself a nice circle, go back round that again. So you don't have to worry with the black about it picking up the pencil lines. So, and if you do, with any painting whatsoever, if you do some painting pencil lines and then you paint, and believe me, this is the voice of experience, leave it a day at least before you come back and rub your lines out, because I'm as guilty as everyone else as being really impatient and the paint not being perfectly dry, and then you smudge it everywhere and you've got some beautiful painting that you've done with a great big smudge line that you then have to try and sort out. So a little bit of patience. So the other thing to do as well with your paintings is, once you think you're done, leave them and come back and have another look at them. So I filled in quite a large area of that eye with my pupil. I want it to be quite big and bold. So, and then what you can also do, and you might find the best thing to do, is switch over to your small brush again. I'm going to do a little bit more dry brushing, so take most of it off, and you can come back in, add a little bit more sort of shadow and interest of your scene. So I'm dry brushing because I want mine to be really quite indistinct and nothingy, so there's just a little bit of something going on there. So the other thing I'm going to do is just, again, light strokes. I'm just going to do some lines radiating outwards. I've not put any more paint on my brush, I'm just using what is there in where I left on my brush from where I was painted earlier. I'm pulling it out from that pupil, and I'm just going to rub over a little bit more dry brushing up towards the top of the eye, giving that a bit more shadow. I've got one final mark to put in. I'm going to put a small one under the eye. Again, if you want to, stick with your small brush. Do what you feel the most comfortable with. Don't try and do this with a great big brush if actually you haven't got much space. If you don't have the space to put this in, don't. So it's as much about knowing what to leave out as it is what to put in. So if there isn't room and you're going to make something really crowded and cramped, don't do it at all. So I'm going to put some more in. So we're going to switch over and put our highlights in on our eyes in a second, and think other things that you could do if you wanted to change some of the details on the painting. You could, if you wanted to, you could maybe put some whiskers just coming in off the edge. The best way to get a good line for something like a whisker, rather than painting it, is actually take a bit of something like a birthday card and paint the edge of that, dab it on some newspaper a couple of times, and then print. You can bend it and you can print, and you'll get a much finer line than you would ever get if you were actually trying to paint with a brush, unless you're super skilled with your lining brushes. So I'm not that skilled with my lining brush. I'm quite good, but I'm definitely not that good. Everyone getting on okay? Oh, I'm glad you like the tips. So I have started doing some little bite-sized videos of the different tips for people, and I will carry on more. They're on our YouTube, little baby YouTube channel that we're starting up. So we will do loads more of those. We know it's really handy for people to just have those little things when they're coming into sessions, so that they know and they can focus on their painting rather than actually having to try and master a new technique. So I think at the moment we've got how to do pine trees, which I know a lot of people struggle to get their heads round. And the other one was sea foam. So just in their most simplest form, they were paintings that were coming up at the time, so it was good to have some little kind of tips on how to do those. So yeah, so Maria's got some fabulous Father's Day paintings coming up. She drew the short straw for those ones. She has she's got this amazing style that she does, and so one of them is in her own style, and the other one is in the style of Banksy. So that's a bit exciting, getting a bit of paint runs in and things like that. So those should be really good fun and have some lovely, very original gifts for any fathers and stuff in your life. And yeah, so I'm going to, Kate, I'm hoping you're referring to mine, but even more I hope you're referring to yours. So I really hope to see these on the hangout later on. So final thing we're going to do, because any animal eye looks dead until you start to put some highlights on, and for this I'm going to use just pure white. I'm going to use two brushes. I've got a nice thin detail brush, and I've got a sort of, let's see what size, I've got a number 8 round brush, but any sort of slightly chunkier round brush. And one of the best ways to get a good circle is to actually use a cotton bud and just wet it a little bit, tap it on some tissue to get the excess out, and then dip it in your white paint, work it a little bit in your white paint, and then paint with that, and you get a lovely, or just dab, you'll get a really lovely round circle. It's much easier to get a perfect circle with something like that than it is with a paintbrush, unless you've got specific circle paint like brushes. So I'm just going to use some straight white, and my black's still a little bit on the wet side, but if I don't work the paint too much, I should be okay here. So I'm going to start off giving this a little wiggle and some a nice big chunky highlight, then just down and to the side of it I'm going to put a slightly smaller one. So I personally find with highlights I like to put 2 different sizes in. Once you put a highlight in an eye, it totally changes your painting. So it's really something to kind of think of, because we've got this really big intense eye. We want to put a bit more going on than we would normally. So with my big chunky brush again, I'm going to put this line here. So normally if you were doing a whole animal, you'd just put maybe one, maybe 2 highlights in, but because we're really focusing our painting on the eye here. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing. I've taken most of the white off, and on the inside corner I'm just going to rub into this triangle shape. So just starting to go up, and then I'm going to come across and into the pupil. So, and then with my detail brush I'm going to put some marks in the middle of that. So we've got a bit of a reflection going on. You can put more highlights in, and the other thing you can do again with a dry brush, so not too much paint on, I'm gonna just put a few little details, just rub a few little lighter areas in my background that I've done. So we've got some highlights. So I mean, you could do anything. You could, if you really want to go for it, you could do a cityscape in there, you could put people in there, anything like that. That would just look amazing. But by doing those highlights on your eye, you're suddenly making the eye really glossy, and it really stands out and is a massive contrast against the flatness of the rest of the painting. So that, flamboyant tiger. So what I would say with this, and with any painting that you do, and this really is an important tip, have a look at it from a distance at various stages through your painting, and also when you feel like you're almost done. So either just stand up, it's always good to stand up, that's what we're meant to do these days, have a bit of a walk around, get your 250 steps in. If you've got a Fitbit, you'll know what that means, and have a look from a distance, or just take a photo on your phone, because your painting will look totally different from a distance, and that is actually how it's meant to be viewed, not close up as you're painting it. That's why you, in films and things, you always see painters, they do a bit and then they step back. So have a look from a distance. That's how everyone else is going to see it, and you'll see the textures and the shading and all that kind of stuff more than you will do up close. So, oh no, it's 250 steps an hour. Mine just reminds me like constantly. So yeah, I drink a lot of tea now because I have to keep going. I'm like, right, I'll get up and go and make a cup of tea once an hour, so that I get my steps in, and then I walk around the kitchen a lot. So that is our tiger eye, our Eye of the Tiger finished. I really hope that you've enjoyed this session. I really hope that you will join us on Bank Holiday Monday and for the Howling. What I can do while you guys are painting is show you some of the sessions that is coming up, and so you can have a bit of a look and see while you guys are finishing off, and then hopefully that will give you time. And please, I'm not going to disappear straight away, so please do ask any questions, any tips or anything like that that you want a bit of a hand with. So Bank Holiday Monday is the Howling. So again, lots of streaky blending and texture, and this works really well because landscape painting, you want your backgrounds to be pale and indistinct and not too much detail. So we're working on the principle of landscape painting, and then we've got our lovely owlins. So lots of nice texture, great for adults and kids for that one. So Maria's got her beautiful version of the classic painting, The Mermaid, tomorrow. I'm back on Sunday with, I'm a bit of a horsey girl, so we have Spirit of Freedom, and so this is great if you're really kind of normally very tight with your painting and very super detailed. This one will be a pleasure and a struggle because we're going to look at being really free and leaving bits out and stuff like that. We also look at how warm and cool colours recede and come forward, which creates the distance in your painting. So this is quite an interesting colour theory kind of a painting. So what else have we got coming up? We have, where we were talking about Dalmatians. Again, this is a little bit more of our colour theory. You can see here what I was saying about printing the whiskers with your card. So yeah, this is our adult session Dalmatian. I was really chuffed with him. So super pleased with him when I don't know where he came from all of a sudden. And then, so Tuesday next week, if you're into your big cats, we have Burning Bright. So this is what I was saying about being really vibrant and going with your oranges and reds and bright vibrant yellows. So this was a good example of showing the other colourway that you could do this Eye of the Tiger in. So again, lots of brush strokes, lots of card printing for our whiskers. So that's that. Other ones we've got for half term coming up. So so the Howling is Monday. Maria's on Tuesday with Simba and Mufasa, and then I'm back on Wednesday. This was our competition for naming our flamingo. So Flo Flamingo will be on 10 o'clock on Wednesday of half term, and then I'm back on Friday. So for anyone who has done our rainbow zebra painting, this is kind of like a companion painting to sit with it. This is our rainbow leopard. So again, kind of working in negative space and leaving areas out is as important as what you put in. So really going for it with the big cats at the moment. The other thing I've been really into has been camper van. So we've got 2 camper van sessions coming up over the next couple of months, and this was split screen. So this, again, you can adapt it to any colours you like. You can adapt it to be a bay if you like as well. And then for those of you who were, when I was saying about the scumbling technique in the painting around the white, this is the Venice one. So this is a free session in July, and oh, let me move it. I bet I've moved it the wrong way now. Yes, there we go, back the other way. So this is yeah, so I took the colours that Monet used in his painting of Rouen Cathedral, and the principles of that, and we scumble. And so you start off painting your canvas in totally the opposite colours to the one that you end up with. So, and this gives you this beautiful glow because the paint clashes. So hopefully, right, so just managed to catch up with some of your questions. Paper size for the Howling, I've just used a 40 by 30 canvas. Anything that's portrait like that is absolutely fine. Yeah, so again, everything we try and do is really adaptable to whatever you have. We don't want to be too strict because people don't need to go out and spend loads of money on stuff. So if you're on a square canvas, I'll help you adapt it to a square canvas. And so yes, I know, so we're used to doing this on Zoom, and for some reason Zoom corrects my camera, so all the sessions that I've been talking about will all be over Zoom except for the free Facebook Live ones, and hopefully by then I will have sorted out my technical issues, and I'll go and buy myself a new webcam, one that doesn't strobe with the lights and stuff, and we'll be ready to go. So does anyone want to ask me any questions? Does anyone need any guidance, or you're a dragon, I'm a horse, okay. I want to be a dragon. I would have thought you were a mermaid. You're a mermaid and I'm a unicorn. That's the so actually Spirit of Freedom really easily adapted to be a unicorn if you've got some unicorn obsessed children. It's one of those ones, it honestly looks a lot harder. It looks a lot like it's a lot more accomplished than it actually is. It's a really quite surprisingly easy and forgiving painting. So yeah, so thank you very much. A massive thank you to Maria for the commentary, and I really, really hope you guys have enjoyed that session. And sorry about the technical issues that we've had, and hopefully I'll have sorted that out by next time. I have to say, I've really not enjoyed painting without being able to chat to you guys. I really miss that, because that is one of our key things, is that our sessions are as sociable as possible, and that was the kind of the principle of what we were based on. So yes. So for those of you who are doing the recording, again, exactly as I said to everyone who's been here with me on the live, please, any questions, any feedback, any requests, and just would love to see how you've got on with your paintings on the group. So I'm going to end the session now, and I'm going to switch straight over to the group, and hopefully I'll be there if you've got any feedback or questions that you want, or tips you want me to ask. So thank you, and yes, I've really missed it, so I've missed talking to you guys too. So right, now I've got to try and work out how to turn this off, so always interesting. So bye.